Okay, great. Okay, good morning. Well, we almost made this come one, bring one. Please find a friend and bring them. But anyway, let's see if we can generate enough energy here this morning amongst all of us who are so deeply situated on this path already, which is wonderful. Means we can go even deeper. But let's see if we can even hold it in a way. We would love this message to go out into the world. We'd love for it to be strong enough that anyone who has even an inkling that they're meant to be on this path would come. When I think of all of the ways that Master has of finding people, which you've all heard me say I want to write a book about one day. I know I'm starting somewhere else, but actually it's all about the topic in a way. I'll come back and pray in a moment. But my favorite story, which some of you have heard me say, is the story of the person who was on that show that I never remember the name of, but you have to you pick like a number, A3, and the thing flips over. This is on a television station, and it shows you something, like a can of peas, let's say. And then the next time you're up and you get this can of peas over here, but you have to remember where its match was. I don't know the name of that. Do you know? Anyway, whatever it was, it doesn't matter, was very big in like the 70s or 80s or something. People made a lot of money on it too. But anyway, somebody said once that this is what drew them to the path. Whatever the topic was, it was probably books of a spiritual nature or something. The picture, the cover of the AY showed, and that person was just drawn. Immediately knew that this was a contestant, knew that they had to find out who that person was. And just last year, I was telling this story. I don't know if any of you were in the class or not. And somebody said to me, that was my cousin. They actually knew. I mean, it was years ago. And here I was telling the story. I mean, Master just works in such phenomenal ways. So let's just all today, as we're listening and diving deep into truth, is what we're doing here. We're speaking about truth. We're trying to make it ever increasingly more real, more present in our own lives, which is why we keep coming to things like this, because we hear it and we're reminded and we go deeper. You know, for the next few days, we remember something meaningful, then it gets moved to the background a little bit, then we come back. It's wonderful. The path is wonderful like that. But it's also just hold it somewhere in our consciousness that we're sending these vibrations out into the world so that those who are ready to find these teachings can find them here. Let's begin with a prayer. Heavenly Father, Divine Mother, friend, beloved God, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Shri Yukteswar, Paramahansa Yoganandaji, saints of all religions, friend and guide Swami Kriyananda, we humbly bow before all of you. Divine Mother, grant us the grace, the wisdom, and the energy to dive deep, searching for truth, always looking to remember that our true nature is divine, that we are one with thee, and in that knowing, we would find perfect health and wellness. Om Shanti. Amen. Okay, I'm going to put my glasses on. I just want to be able to see you all. This is, I was just reading some things this morning and remembering so many times at East West when I've spoken about wellness over the years. Many times, I don't know how many. It's, of course, always a popular topic, as it should be, but I've always been aware that I'm speaking in public. It's very different than coming here knowing this morning that I would be speaking to people who are, to a large degree, living these teachings, practicing these teachings, feeling enthusiastic about living as many moments as we can in a state of wellness, which, of course, Swamiji described as an attitude of the mind. So it's very interesting. Swamiji never mentions the physical body when he talks about wellness, but he does say that it's an attitude of the mind that needs to be cultivated. And I was just realizing as I was going through this that no matter where we are on this continuum of this spiritual path, from millions of years ago until now, no matter how close we are to finding ourselves closer and closer to living in pure divine energy, which I'll back up in a few moments, for anybody who might be watching who doesn't live in these teachings all the time, and say that's the goal. But no matter where we are, that we always have progress to make, and that we are, I don't want to say unfortunately, but just in truth, often in a state of forgetfulness, even this far into the path. And I was realizing, this sounds like a silly example, but it's not. You all know that I ruptured my Achilles tendon last July. So what is that? 6 months exactly now. And all this time, since I got back in September and I found out that it was ruptured, and it's been the most painful thing I've ever lived with physically. Any surgery, anything. This was the most painful and debilitating thing I've ever had to go through. And I asked myself this morning, and I'm seeing doctors, and I'm seeing medical massage therapists, and I'm having acupuncture. It sounds like I'm being expansive. But I asked myself, when is the last time that you prayed about your ankle? Really said in my prayers, let me just leave it that way, I know that this ankle can heal. I know it can. What will it take for it to heal? And just as I was looking at, I don't know where I got it, but suddenly I had an advertisement, a printed flyer from East West about a medical intuitive. Maybe it came in my mailbox or something, I don't know. And I said to myself yesterday, call her. What if she says to you, take a little bit of this supplement X, and your Achilles will be healed? And I got very excited about it. And I am going to call her. That's not the point. I will call her. But this morning, I felt so embarrassed about myself when it came to me. Like, I know this Achilles could be healed almost instantaneously if I were in the right place. It means right attitude. It means remembering that we have been created in the perfect image of the divine. If I could remember the true meaning of wellness, which is aligning our energy, again, through the use of right attitude, right habits. I mean, we all know many of the things. We could go through Joe Tish's book, 30 Days to Wellness, or whatever the book is called. It's like that. But it's like Swamiji's Secrets. And he gives you, and he talks about diet and exercise and laughter. And he talks about many things, but what are they all doing? They're all bringing our energy in, and they're lifting it up. And he starts with a beautiful few-paragraph introduction. I don't have it here, but it's just so perfect because he reminds us of the essence of wellness, and that is that we cannot take even a step towards what we think, how we think we'd like to be well, until we remember or realize that we are pure energy, that we are pure manifestations of divine energy, and how that manifests physically, either in perfect health, physical health, a torn Achilles or a perfect Achilles, arthritis of the knee or no arthritis of the knee, heart disease or not. We could just go on and on. However that manifests reflects back to us the degree that we are forgetful, that we're being forgetful. Swamiji, in an article that he wrote, a beautiful article for the little journal that used to come out several times a year from Ananda. I'm forgetting the name of it right now. They quit publishing it quite a while ago. But he calls this talk spiritual ignorance, the cause of all disease. That's powerful. Spiritual ignorance, the cause of all disease. He doesn't say some disease. He doesn't say occasionally, but then there are exceptions. He says all disease is connected to spiritual ignorance. And he doesn't mean ignorance like rude, or he doesn't mean it in any condescending way. He means it to say we're forgetful. We forget and we get confused. And out of that forgetfulness, lifetime after lifetime, and out of that confusion comes karma, life after life, and through karma, through this energy of karma, which is right at the core of our being. It's laid down. It's a roadmap. We all know this. We say these words. But to realize that what, in the ways that we've been forgetful in the past, never mind how we'll continue to be forgetful, but whatever we've done in the past exists within us in the form of what we call our karma. And it manifests as you could be wealthy, you could be poor, you could have great, quote, unquote, luck with relationships, bad luck with relationships. You can be physically ill, you can have one problem after another. You could be well, you could be somebody who comes in with depression, you could be joyful. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter. All of that is an imbalance and being out of tune with this truth that we are pure energy, and that as we go about reimagining that energy, I just want to look and see. Oh, here are his words, which are so wonderful. He reminds us, first of all, this is so important, he reminds us that the energy that we bring into the body at birth is intelligent energy. It has intelligence in it. So there's no happenstance here. There's no luck. We call things luck. There's really no such thing as good luck or bad luck. It doesn't actually exist. It exists in the minds of people who are only thinking, living, feeling, being very superficial. They would say, oh, you had such good luck. And I would think, no, it's not good luck, because we are driving every experience in our life. We may be doing it unconsciously, but it doesn't mean that we're not doing it. We do many things in life unconsciously. In fact, I would venture to say that the vast majority of people spend the vast majority of their time in life living unconsciously. But I forget what the beginning of that sentence was. It doesn't matter. We may be doing it unconsciously, but the effect is the same. There is no such thing as luck. We always have the ability to take control, to move things in the right direction, to choose to be well. Wellness is not something that comes any other way than by our choice. Just like we all read this all the time in our teachings about happiness. And it's true. Happiness isn't a condition. It's not something that exists. It's a choice. It's always a choice under every circumstance. So when we hear this story over and over and over again about the fire at Ananda decades ago, and that wonderful story of how Davy went off with Mark, who was 8 days old, took him into town for an examination, comes back, knows immediately something's wrong, and she's greeted at the entrance to the community, in case anybody's watching who doesn't know, Ananda community in Nevada City. Her husband drives out to the entrance and greets her, and he says to her, well, I have good news and bad news for you today. You know, the good news is I'm okay. Everything's okay. The bad news is we've lost everything we owned. The entire village was burned down. But there was not a moment where Jyotish lost his state of equanimity, of peace, of what we could call happiness. Remember that wonderful story that Jaya tells of being in India, where somebody's saying to him after a talk, what powers have you attained by meditating? Because, of course, meditation is the main tool by which we can get to this state of centeredness, upliftedness. And he thought for a minute. He said, I don't think I have any powers. And then he said, no, wait a minute. I have one power. There's one thing I've learned. What's that? How to choose to be happy under all circumstances. This is really an important reminder, because we're not there yet. And we are the highly evolved souls. Just because we want to be hearing this says a lot. But I would venture to say that none of us is there all the time, under all circumstances, yet. Because that ability to do that is that state of perfect spiritual awareness, of perfect spiritual remembrance that we are manifestations of pure divine energy, that we are made in the image of the divine, and that nothing can ever go wrong, that everything that's going, as I was saying before, isn't about luck or lack of luck. It all has to do with our willingness to raise our energy, even how much energy we have in life. So Swamiji speaks about spiritual ignorance, and he reminds us that our natural state as being manifestations of the divine is to be perfectly healthy in all ways, body, mind, and soul. Perfectly healthy. That's who we would be if we were perfectly in tune. That's who we will be as we neutralize, free ourselves from all karma. And every effort that we make in this way, every bit of effort that we spend gets us closer and closer and closer. And it feels like it's little by little, though for those of you who were here last night, which I think is almost everyone, we can have an experience like the energy that was in this temple as we celebrated Master's birthday. And for instances, if not the whole evening, whatever it was for you, we feel that state of being perfectly well. We feel it. Nothing's pulling on us, in any other direction. There's no negative vibration. There's no static. There's no interference, is really the right word. Hearts are open. And I just read something else that Swamiji said that's very meaningful. He quoted the quote that we've all heard from Sri Yukteswar, when Sri Yukteswar says, you will not be able to put one foot in front of the other on the spiritual path until you've awakened the heart's natural love, is what we hear almost all of the time. What Swamiji says in this article, he says, the most important thing of all is our attunement to the divine. Of course, we know that because that's just bringing ourselves into that perfect state of balance with who we are. But he says, Swami Sri Yukteswar said that the unfolding of the heart's natural love fills the body with such harmonious energy that it banishes all disease. That's a very powerful statement of truth. So it means, and remember, what we're doing is we're talking about what are the ways that we can remind ourselves that we're pure energy, because of course we forget. You tear your Achilles tendon, it hurts. You think your whole being exists in that ankle. That's what happens. It's compelling to be in pain or to not like your body or to have an illness that you have to, a physical illness that you have to take care of. But to constantly come back to the fact that we are energy. I remember when I was having my shoulder surgery a lot of years ago now, and Shivani called me, and she's just put out this trilogy of books on all of Master's teachings on health and wellness. I haven't looked at it yet, but I'm sure it's quite a work. It's at least exhaustive, I will say that, and knowing her as I do. But she said to me, I watched a friend of mine go through shoulder surgery. There's going to be a lot that you can't do. Energize twice a day. I said to her, that's not making much sense. It wasn't. A lot you can't do, but energize. It's like what Master said to Swamiji. Hurry up, fix this work, but don't make any changes. It's sort of like, doesn't quite make sense, except she said to me, you do them in your mind, and you do them with as much energy and power as if you were literally physically doing them. She said, in fact, it will be stronger. And it's true. And I'm clearly not completely healed yet, but well on my way. And I've been doing my energization that way. even with my ankle, because I can't do it otherwise, many of the exercises anyway. Why is that? Because it's all energy, which is the only reason the Master gave us the energization exercises. He said, I'm going to give you this gift that will teach you all, if you do them regularly, how to remind yourself that your energy, and furthermore, beyond that, how to learn to be so perfectly in touch with that energy that you can put it right where you need it, that you can use it creatively, spiritually. And for those of us who energize regularly, we see it working, whether we've perfected it or not, whether it's the way we speak, the way we choose to love, just all of the ways that we've taken charge of our lives. I don't even want to say control, but to take charge of our lives by this basic realization that everything is energy and that it can always be transformed, always be transmuted, which is really the essence of wellness. Swamiji says here, the body's ability to heal or resist disease, these are his words, depends primarily and essentially on being able to draw energy into the body from the cosmic source and then rearrange it, to have the power to realign it, which is what Kriya is really all about. It really is about working with energy and rearranging it. We are opening up energetic blocks in our being. And as we do that, we are, remember, this isn't only about physical wellness, physical health, but we are moving towards that state of perfect wellness. So the concept of energy first is essential. The belief, the understanding that everything's energy, that can always be changed, even from what look like solid forms to not solid forms. I wanted to let me just see if I can find. Give me one moment, because there's a phrase that Swamiji, this is it. This is so wonderful. He says, the body itself is not a physical object, which we say all the time. It's really hard for us to get ourselves to believe that. But he uses this wonderful phrase. He says, it's a holding pattern of energy. Isn't that just a perfect phrase? The body is where we hold energy, but the pattern can be changed. And this is why often people will say to me, I hear it about many things, but I hear it very often when people are working on losing weight or changing their body in one way or another. They'll very often say, I came to the realization that this had less to do with calories, with even exactly what foods I eat, not to say that that's not important, foods have energy too, but it was much more about my consciousness. And that's true, and that's what Swamiji is saying. He's saying, don't change anything in the external world and think that that will change anything significant within you. It simply doesn't. He's saying, change your consciousness, change the energy pattern, and everything will change. And he says here, when we change the holding pattern, and this is so interesting and important, Jyotish speaks a lot about this too because Jyotish loves science. But they talk about when you make these changes, the profound impact that it has on all of the chemicals in our body, all of the neurochemicals, all of the hormones, all of those things that drive our moods, even I was just talking about weight, just everything about us, how we digest food. We're finding this out more and more. But what we're still not finding out, I read an article in one of my medical journals the other day. Well, I didn't really read the article because I didn't need to. But the article talked about in big, bold letters how let me see if I can remember the words. I'm not going to get, what are the enzymes called that are in the gut that we now know get changed by? The microbiome. Talking about, this is new to medicine. So their great discovery is that moods that people are in or foods that people eat can change the microbiome. And the microbiome affects everything for us, everything. It's essential that it be healthy and balanced. And now medicine is just saying, look at this. We see that it changes. But they're still talking about, in science very often, what's happening out there. But what Swamiji is saying to us is every change, even at that molecular level, even at that biochemical level, which we can initiate by what? Not just even by meditation, which we all know can be very challenging. It's not like you say, oh, just meditate, and that's easy. No, it's not always easy to meditate. But Master says, smile. Just smile a few times a day. Just do something nice for somebody. Just say a kind word. All of this holding pattern literally gets rearranged. I mean, imagine this. It is so simple. The things that we could do to be helping ourselves instead of suffering with whatever we have, needing, you all know, I'm not against medicines. I'm absolutely not. But it doesn't necessarily need to be the first choice, and it doesn't necessarily need to be a final choice. We know for sure, without a doubt now, that meditation itself can affect the level of people's depression. We know that. We know even if they still need medicine, maybe they only need one medicine instead of 3. This has been documented. We know this. Where was I speaking the other day where my friend, Sunday service. A friend of mine came to Sunday service, very dear friend. She has significant high blood pressure. She's on 3 medicines, the way most people are who have high blood pressure. Very hard to treat with one medicine in most instances. And she actually came to this conference we did years ago where I presented slides and data on medical studies on these things. She was sitting right there, and I kept looking at her, saying, imagine that, 15 minutes of meditation, and people come off of their blood pressure medicine. Imagine that. I mean, there was no beginning of meditation after that. It's very challenging, but it doesn't change the truth. And for us, what we can know is that every way that we advance, not just with meditation, and I'm saying this for the whole world to hear, it doesn't matter whether you meditate or not, when you begin to develop the heart's natural devotion, you are moving towards a state of wellness. We're moving towards that state that we all would like to attain. And Swamiji just describes it here in this sentence by saying, he says, every time that we change the holding pattern, we suddenly find new and different chemicals rushing in to take the place that's been created for them. Even those chemicals that lift our mood, they're natural antidotes to depression, to pain. I mean, we've all heard of the endorphins, but there's other chemicals. So he's saying every human being has within them the power to move towards a state of health and wellness, and not just physical. We're not just speaking physically. Of course, we're speaking spiritually. Those of us here know that. But even for the whole world of people who aren't yet interested in growing spiritually, there is so much benefit to begin to change the way we think, change the way that we hold our mind, change the way that we behave. And it's insidious and prevalent. I just had my family here, my partner's daughter and her 2 little girls. And to those 2 little girls, I'm the grandmother, and they think I'm an absolute miracle because they have another grandmother who's not quite my age, who's not as energetic as I am. So they're getting very disappointed that my skin's changing and I'm getting aging marks and wrinkles. It's a big bother to them. But every time I'm with them, and it happened this time, I took them out for a few hours just by myself without their mother. So they'll say other things to me then. All kids do. The mother's not around, they'll be a little more free. And wherever we went, whenever I would engage somebody, the older one who's very sort of shy and anxious in public, quit talking, Sean. I'd be saying something nice to somebody, creating a little dialogue with the women who were doing our nails, just being friendly, talking. And she kept saying to me, they both did, why do you have to be so friendly? That's their question in the world. It's not as if I'm absurd about it, but somebody waits on you, you say thank you. Somebody does, right? We would all do that. But most of the world wouldn't do it. And yet, now we know that if we do it, everything about us changes. Everything about us leads us towards this state of wellness that we're going to talk more and more about today. So I'll end here. Yeah.
Our morning is split into 3 different parts or 3 different stages. And the first stage that Shanti was just sharing with us is this question of, in terms of the question of how do we transform? This course is called Change Your Life, Yogic Tools for Self-Transformation. And nobody in this room needs a list of yogic tools for self-transformation. We know them, but what we need is the inspiration to remember how to practice them. I find that all the time. I could give you the encyclopedia of all the things that I should do, but just as Shanti was sharing with this story about her Achilles heel, how many times do we forget to do them? And so today is a bit of a reminder in that. And what we're going to do in terms of working and practicing with this first step, which was redefining, reframing wellness. Where does true wellness lie? Where do we look for true wellness? Because it's easy. I too just spent the last few days with my family. We had a lovely time. My parents, my sister, her husband, her 2 kids, my 2 aunts, my cousin, their 2 dogs, and me. We all we rented a big house in Palm Springs and just spent 3 days together in Palm Springs, which we all haven't been together like that probably in 15 years, just where you wake up and you're having breakfast together and, playing with the dogs and the little kids out by the pool and things like that. And, but the conversations were all centered on our jobs. My brother-in-law always asks me, because as most of you know, part of my life is absorbed in my teaching, I was going to say career, but really my teaching job, because this is my life, this is where I want to be. And he always is asking questions about how teaching is going, because that's the part of my life that he understands and can relate to. How are the kids? What are you teaching with? And I was so bored. 2 minutes into it, I said, I don't want to talk about it. That's not what interests me. But that's what interests the world, and it's not a criticism of that. What else would he have to relate to if I sat down and said, the first day that I got there, my little 3-year-old, she's actually 2.5, she's just starting to learn what birthdays mean because she's going to birthday parties. And so my sister had made a little cake just to celebrate because everyone was having dinner. And she said, it's a birthday, because you have cake on birthdays. And so we put a candle in because she wanted to blow out the candle. And she said, whose birthday is it? And, we just celebrated Christmas. And I said, well, do you know who just had a birthday? And I don't think she's ever heard the word Jesus before. And I said, Jesus just had a birthday. And we sang happy birthday to Jesus and all of that, so all by way of saying, I don't criticize my brother-in-law for wanting to talk about teaching in the world and the new car that they need to get because the old car is, falling apart, and how much we want our car payment to be, and this and that and all of that world. Because if I said, let's talk about Jesus, they would just run in the other direction. But why am I saying all of that? To come back to this point that we're discussing, I was saying all of that because spending this time with my family, it was so easy to see how, just as Shanti was sharing, we think that self-transformation happens out here. If I can just move all of these parts around in my life, then I'll be happier, then I'll be satisfied. I play that game with myself. All the time. She was talking about weight loss. I think about that all the time. If I buy new shoes, I'll go running every day. If I make the right playlist, I'll go running every day. If I buy the perfect meditation pillow, I'm going to have deep meditations. And so I've tried pillow after pillow after pillow. But I'm still there. I'm still sitting on the pillow, no matter how perfect it is. The transformation, true wellness, what we want to strive to transform, that's what we need to redefine. And again, as Shanti was sharing, nobody in this room needs a lesson in that particular aspect. We know that's what we're striving to do, but where does that true wellness lie? And so the tool that we're going to practice today in that is shifting our awareness and our energy into the superconscious, because as we know, that's the only place where we can access that well of wellness, or that source of wellness, that it has to come when we are tuned in to our highest state of consciousness. Or just like Shanti's saying, we come back to all of the things that limit us with a torn Achilles. And we wake up every day and we think about the ways that we're limited in that, versus looking at what is still available. What can I still do? Shanti and I were just joking a few days ago, because most of you know, our relationship kind of formed because we were both willing to wake up at 6 a.m. and go on walks together. And, we always joke one day that, she says, even if I'm in a wheelchair, we're going on walks and we're walking around in a wheelchair or whatever. And who knows, it might be me in the wheelchair first. God only knows what our karma brings. But it's that attitude of progress, that attitude of a willingness to adapt and to change. And we can only tap into that creativity and that innovation when we are in a higher state of consciousness. Swami Kriyananda so famously said, that we hear over and over again, you can't change an issue in the same state of consciousness that you're in. So if you want to change something, you have to change your state of awareness in order to actually create change. Otherwise, we're just down here moving parts around. Later on, when I actually speak a little bit more to you guys, with you guys, I'll give you a handout of quotes by Swami and Yogananda on self-transformation. And there's one of them that's so beautiful. He talks about how life is like a deck of cards, and we're just constantly shuffling that deck of cards so that every time you turn over 5 cards, you think it's different, but it's the same 52 cards. We're just shuffling, and the only way to really change is to put the cards down and get outside of that limitation and to see that we can access a whole different wellspring of potential. So in order to practice this now, what we're going to do is work on a visualization. And so we can just sit up straight. The first part of our visualization is one that many of you have probably done before. We're going to work on our different states of consciousness and work on developing and tuning into and experiencing different states of consciousness. And Yogananda gives a wonderful tool that we can use in order to do this, simply by shifting our eyes and our awareness. So we have these 3 states of consciousness: the subconscious state, which is where we're running on autopilot. It's that reservoir of all of our past habits and experiences that get stored, and that reactivity that comes just almost automatically, or that feeling, that experience that comes in response to a situation, that fear that just pops up, that maybe even feels irrational at times, that wellspring of, or that reservoir of past habits. And when we're moving through that subconscious state, we're not in control of our own consciousness. We're running on autopilot. And then, of course, we have the conscious state of awareness, which is where we're interacting and engaging in the world, when we have to be working and moving and thinking and putting our effort and energy in that awake state of consciousness. And then, just by lifting our eyes up to the point between the eyebrows, either open or behind closed eyelids, we can begin to experience that superconscious state. And it's in that superconscious state that we tap into intuitive truth, innovation, creativity that our limited mind can't access on its own. That's that state of true divine connection. And so as we practice this, the way that Yogananda encourages us to experience each of these mental states is first to just close our eyes, sitting up nice and tall. Just take a few deep diaphragmatic breaths just to center yourself into the space. And the first thing that we're going to do behind closed eyelids is just turn our gaze down as though you're looking down at the floor. And mentally affirm as you're looking down at the floor, through slowly drifting waters, I sink into subconsciousness. In slowly drifting waters, I sink into subconsciousness. Feel the heaviness that comes along with just this simple practice. And then, with a burst of inhalation, opening the eyes and looking straight ahead, with a burst of energy, I rise to greet the world. With a burst of energy, I rise to greet the world. And just feel the difference there, closing the eyes again, allowing the gaze to sink down. Through slowly drifting waters, I sink into subconsciousness. In slowly drifting waters, I sink into subconsciousness. And inhaling, opening the eyes. With a burst of energy, I rise to greet the world. With a burst of energy, I rise to greet the world. And now, gently coaxing that inhalation higher, let's lift our gaze to the point between the eyebrows. I am awake in thy light. I am joyful. I am free. I am awake in thy light. I am awake in thy light. I am joyful. I am free. I am awake in thy light. Keeping that affirmation strongly present, with the gaze uplifted. I awake in thy light. I am joyful. I am free. I awake in thy light. And let's keep the eyes closed as we move into a visualization to help us to tap into that source of wellness, that source of transformation that we need to take our next steps spiritually, that we need to help us to grow. And the power of visualization is that it's merging the causal and the energetic world. Because so often the things that we want just exist in that ideational space. We think about all the things we wish we had, we daydream about how things could be different. But visualization engages our energetic attention, our concentration, and our awareness. And so the visualization that we're going to do today is going to help us to become aware and to ask the question, what do I need to transform and to grow? What can I be offered right now in this moment to take my next steps? And so let's begin our visualization, walking down a gently wooded path, just as the sun is setting. Feel yourself surrounded in the nature, the trees open and inviting. Each plant, each animal, reaching up to the last few sparkles of sunlight, offering themselves back into that source of light in gratitude. Feel yourself becoming aware of each step that you're taking. The crunch of the dirt as you move one foot in front of the other, perfectly at peace. All the thoughts of the day melting away with the setting sun. All the worries of tomorrow at rest in the peaceful moonlight. As you continue walking, imagine that you come to the shores of a beautiful lake. The sky is darkened now. The first stars are beginning to shine, and the moon gently rises up overhead. You find a beautiful, still pool of water and a patch of grass to sit upon. Take a moment soaking in the beauty of the rippling water, calm and peaceful, serene, the world quiet. Bring your attention to the rising moon and begin to tune into the power that the moon possesses. The moon is an important symbol for each of us as truth seekers, walking on our spiritual path, because the moon does not assert its power. The moon does not engage with the world through brute force and strength, but rather its magnificence comes through its receptivity, to listen, to absorb, and to reflect the power of its source, that sunlight. And each one of us, just like the moon, when we tune into our own deepest sense of awareness, become an aspect reflecting the power of divine consciousness. Feel yourself absorbing the moon rays, bouncing off the water. And peer into the reflection of your own self in the deep pools of stillness. Asking Divine Mother, what do I need to take my next step? How can I grow? Lifting the gaze to the point between the eyebrows, asking the question from the deepest stillness of your heart. What do I need to take my next step? What can you offer me to help me to grow? And feel yourself as though sitting for hours and hours in the deep stillness of meditation, listening for the answer of Divine Mother, listening for her whispers, so long that the sky begins to lighten. One by one, the stars disappear, the sun rising overhead. With the transformation and the dawning of a new day, we gently rise, walk the path out of the woods, step by step by step, holding the power and the gentleness of that receptivity in our own hearts. And feel free to come back into the space, opening your eyes as you're ready to. And I'll invite Saiganesh up.
To stand up and do a couple of full yogic breaths just to move the energy. After, I'll speak briefly and then we'll have a chance to take a restroom break. Let's just first stand still, grounding ourselves and taking a deep breath, closing our eyes, lifting our gaze just as Lakshmi was guiding. And then when you feel ready, make sure your diaphragm is relaxed, and let's use our hands to bring that energy up. Stretching tall, offering yourself into the light, and then as you exhale, bringing that energy down. Letting go and then bringing it back up through the inhalation. Let's do this 2 or 3 times. Then in the next round, you can bring your arms to the side. And we'll go back to our seats. I'm glad. Yeah. It's a cold day. Well, it's wonderful to be with all of you this morning. The spiritual path and all that we're talking about is an inner reality. It's pretty obvious from all the discussions we have had so far. And it is an inside-out transformation when we talk of change and transformation. But in an interesting way, it is not actually counterintuitive. But when it comes to practice in yoga and in our own life, Whether you call it spiritual or not, the words don't actually make any difference. It's just a label. Transformation and change is often outside in. By outside in, I don't mean you try to fix everything in your apartment, try to, as Lakshmi was saying, try to buy a new meditation mat or running shoes. I mean our outside. We start with things that we can control and we have full awareness of. Moving on to things that we have awareness of and yet fully cannot control. Finally, that takes us to places, that takes us to parts of ourselves that we don't even yet have awareness of. And that's generally how transformation in itself works. I want to start with a story. And maybe some of you have heard this story. This is a story from the Indian scriptures. This is a story of how the Ramayana was written. It's a story of the sage named Valmiki. And Ramayana, as you all know, is the story of the great Lord Rama. He was an avatar, and he was the avatar in Treta Yuga, a long, long time ago. And this sage was born at the end of Treta Yuga, just as the Mahabharata happened at the end of Dwapara Yuga. And interestingly, he was not born a sage. He was born into a nomadic family, and he was actually born into a family of robbers. And they would just attack and intimidate people that were traveling in forest trails, and they would just steal everything that the traveling groups had. So Valmiki at that point, his name was not Valmiki. I don't remember what his name was at that time. But that's the profession he followed. He was a robber. He was a wayside robber. And he lived with his parents. He had his wife. He had his kids. He had to feed a family. So, he had to work very hard. He would go out in the night, and he would just threaten people, attack them, and he would rob. And this just went on. And, we normalize whatever our life is. And I'll talk about it in just a bit. And his life felt perfectly normal. That's what he was born into. That's what his profession was. So that's what he went about doing. And one fine day, he was, going about his business, robbing people. And then he comes across this, he stops somebody who's walking in the forest at night. And this man happened to be a sage. And he stopped the sage and he said, obviously point the knife, or however they do that. It's probably more just like mugging, as you would imagine, in today's world. He basically said, give me all that you have, and then I'll let you go. I won't kill you. And then the sage said, I don't have anything. I'm just a sadhu. I'm a nomadic sadhu. I'm just walking around in this forest. I don't have anything to give you. And then Valmiki said, you must have something. Just give me something. And the sage said, this is all I have. Whatever he had is food or, little money or books or whatever he was carrying. He gave it to Valmiki. And he said, I really don't have anything else. You can check me. And if you want all these things, you're welcome to have them. And Valmiki said it's obviously a lost cause, and he was just going to let him go. And before they departed, the sage looked at Valmiki and asked the sadhu, why are you doing this? Do you think this is the right thing that you're doing? This life that you're leading as a robber, do you think this is actually leading you to happiness? And then Valmiki said, what do you mean? I don't know. This is the only thing I know how to do. What else can I do? And then the sage asked, but do you realize that you're accruing a lot of bad karma by robbing people, by doing these actions? And Valmiki says, I didn't think about it. This is the only thing I knew how to do, and this is what I've been doing all my life. And he says, if it is in fact true that you are accruing a lot of bad karma, then why would you continue doing this? And then Valmiki says the most self-evident thing, because I have to feed a family. I have two parents, and I have my wife, I have my kids, I have to feed all of them. What will I do if I'm not robbing people every day here in the forest? And then the sage asked, okay, I understand. So by robbing people, you're of course sharing all of your bounty, all the wealth that you're collecting with your family. Now I wonder though, you're sharing whatever you have earned, whatever you have collected, you have robbed with all of them. I wonder if they'll also partake in all the bad karma that you're collecting by doing this. And Valmiki says, I hope they do, I think they will. And the sage says, how about you come back tomorrow to the same place? Ask them. They're of course taking the collection and, living off of whatever you're making doing this job. Ask them if they would, in fact, also partake in the negative karma that you're collecting. And Valmiki goes back, and then he first approaches his parents, and he asks, I've been taking care of you all this time. You, of course, need my help, and I'm happy to do that as your dutiful son. But I also want to wonder and make sure, I was informed that I'll be having a lot of bad karma because of this job that I've been doing. So because you have been sharing in all the wealth that I've been bringing back into this family, can I assume that you will also take on some of this bad karma, your share of it? And the parents are shocked. And they're like, why would we do that? It's your job to feed us as our son. We are not going to take on your bad karma. That's yours. That's for you to pay. And then Valmiki is shocked. Okay, at least let me go ask my wife and my kids. They're all in this together. She's taking care of the home. I'm bringing in the bread. It's all part of the same family that we are taking care of. So let me ask her. And he goes and asks her. I asked my parents, I was so shocked that they said they wouldn't take part in my bad karma. Would you at least take half of my karma because you're my wife and I'm doing this for our family? The wife says, why would I do that? You're the one going and robbing people. You're the one threatening them. Why would I take on what your karma is? And then the same thing happens with the sons. And then Valmiki at this point is both disappointed and surprised, and he goes back to the sage. And then he tells the sage, he informs how things went on. And then the sage says, I'm not surprised, because that's how the world works. We are all in charge and responsible for our own karma. And so if you were to expiate yourself, if you do not want to carry this burden, then you shouldn't be doing what you're doing. You shouldn't be gathering more sins in your life, because the others want only the positive. They do not want the side effects, the implications of what all of these robberies are bringing to you. And then Valmiki at that point asked the sage in a very humble way, because it's now a moment of awakening for him, reckoning and facing everything that he has been doing all of his life. He says, what can I do? I've created so much bad karma in my life. And this is the part of the story why I wanted to share this episode, is at that point, the sage tells Valmiki, the name of Rama, Lord Rama, is so powerful. It is so pure and sacred. Just by repeating it all day, all your sins will be washed away. And I'll teach you. It's just, you go sit under a tree and you keep saying Rama, Rama, Rama. And then when Valmiki hears that, he tries. And the way the story is told, that he's so full of sin that even that word wouldn't come out of his mouth. He cannot say the name of the Lord because that karma holds him back from being able to do so. And then the sage says, okay, I understand. The name of Maya or Satan in one of the names that in the Indian language is Mara. So the sage says, if you can't say Rama, just say that name, Mara. And then, of course, as you can hear already, he says Rama, 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 and then it becomes Rama because it's just the palindrome, it's the same word. And so the story goes on that Valmiki now walked away from his family, as a renunciate. It is dharmic for him to do so because he is now pursuing a higher dharma. And then he goes and chants whatever the sage taught him under a tree. And then he becomes self-realized. He goes into deep penance, into a higher state of consciousness just by chanting the name of the Lord. And then finally, the entire story of Ramayana is intuitively perceived by him as the historical event happened, and he's the first person who wrote that scripture. Now, I started with the story because, as I was starting to say, we are talking of an inner reality. We are talking of transformation and changes inside out. But in yoga and in life and in practice, it often starts outside in. Because this journey that this man had from being a robber to a sage, from absolute suffering to happiness, from not knowing anything to becoming self-realized, all of this had to start from what he could do. What could he do in this moment? He had to start, whether consciously, unconsciously, intentionally, unintentionally, he had to start somewhere. And he had to start moving in that direction. And then he had to start making small shifts. And It's no longer as short a path or as complex or as difficult, because soon he was on the right track and he could reach his goal, as Larry Marsh had said, doing, done. And in our own life, change or transformation, that's what we're talking about. It's not philosophical. It is something that you do something about. It's something that you practice. It's what am I going to do when I wake up tomorrow morning? And I want to just share a few things, and we'll practice certain things together this morning. And the best way to start, just as we do even in the path of Kriya, now since I'm talking to a room full of Kriya bonds, we can talk about it even on a more subtler or a deeper level. In Kriya or in meditation itself, we are working with subtle energy. However, how do we start doing that? We start by working with our breath. The technique itself is not a breathing technique. We say this all the time on the spiritual path. We don't define pranayama as breath control. We define pranayama as control of energy. However, what are we really doing? Why do so many people in this world translate pranayama as breathing exercises? Because they're just saying at the end of the day, you're just huffing and puffing. It is just a breathing exercise. Well, yes and no, because the breath is the handle. We start with what we can control, what we have complete awareness of, because that is the route, that is the doorway that is going to lead us to things that we can be aware of but not yet control. And that is eventually going to lead us to things that we are not even yet aware of. But the starting point always has to be with things that you are aware of and you can control. And we start making changes there. And eventually it starts impacting and influencing, as long as it's in the right direction. Whether it's conscious or unconscious, there's one thing that Valmiki had to his advantage that took him there, because he had that seed of intention. He had that seed of choice. There was a part of him that was saying, I don't want this. I want something else. I want to do what is right. I want to go in the positive direction. And that's the fuel it really takes, because all of us control something. I control whether I'm going to have oranges for breakfast or apples. We control whether you're going to go on El Camino or Central when you go back to the community. These are trivial choices. But the reason I'm mentioning it is because if you think about it, we are controlling and making a lot of choices as we go through every step, every day, every minute of our lives. And then if we start asking, which one of these choices is going to lead me in the right direction, the answer often is not as difficult to hear or find. It becomes pretty self-evident. It's better for me if I just go to bed right now instead of just watching another movie on my phone. It's better for me if I just wake up, brush my teeth, take a shower, and sit just for 2 minutes, even if I don't feel like meditating this morning. Those of us here might be ahead of that, but still, oftentimes it comes back to these choices. And what I really want to talk about in terms of practice is a few different aspects to it. What are things that we control? What are things that are fundamentally shifting who we are, outside in, inside out, both ways? And simple things, which we often take for granted. The first thing I want to talk about is simply posture. Something as simple as posture. These are all things that both Swami and Master talk about. We often, we approach it in a philosophical way, and that is very important. But sometimes it is very, very simple things. Swami Kriyananda, in the Raja Yoga book, talks about how, especially in the chapter on energy and anatomy, he talks about the importance of always keeping a straight spine. Something as simple as that, as we go through our day, when you're sitting and having your dinner, or even when you're sitting and watching a video on your phone, is your spine straight, or are you sitting and watching like this? In fact, you can notice, and I'm saying this without any critique or judgment, you can notice, since all of you are friends that we all know each other very well, you can watch people that are newer, especially people that may be coming to this temple for the first time, who are coming to a Sunday service or to an event. And I'm not saying new people are somehow less aware or less evolved. They may be. Sometimes people are far more awake when they walk in than we ever can know or imagine. But when people are just caught in the miasma and the hypnosis of just being in the material world and just being driven by the circumstances of their life, you will find them in Sunday service. Oftentimes I've noticed people, even people who are intently listening, they'll be sitting like this, or even worse. Anyway, again, I'm not saying this to criticize or judge, but for us to observe and learn. Because that's what the path of yoga is. Change is lofty, but it's also very simple. Just to be able to sit like this immediately starts shifting energy. The breath. The breath itself is the most powerful tool and key that we have. I'm not just talking about pranayama exercises or meditation or kriya or hongsa, but even being aware of our breath at all times, how relaxed we are. Change and transformation completely hinge on our ability to apply willpower, on our ability to focus. There is no focus without relaxation. There is no concentration without relaxation. There is no ability to channel willpower unless we are relaxed at our center. And this is almost a counterintuitive thought for popular culture. Because how do you do something? How do you accomplish a task? Let's go get it. And most people imagine this is the opposite of relaxation. Let's brace my core. Let's go run. Let's go do it. Yes, let's go do it. But you do it with this sense of inner peace while staying connected with your own calm center within. And that takes enormous amount of relaxation. They are two sides of the same coin. We don't really accomplish our goals if we do not work with both of them. We do not work with the understanding that concentration and relaxation are essentially the two sides of the same coin. When we are completely caught just in the senses, they almost seem like opposites, because the only idea of relaxation that people who live in the world of senses, is one that is subconscious. And the only way that they know how to act is conscious. So they imagine both of them to be opposites. But when we are constantly trying to tune into the superconscious, we realize both of these come together. We focus by lifting our energy, by aligning it with the superconscious, and we cannot do that until we are also fully relaxed. And relaxation is possible, can happen only when we are also able to stabilize our breath. There is no way to relax. Even I'm somebody who enjoys running. And oftentimes, I was running with a friend, he was asking me, I was not even doing it consciously. It was something that I just developed many years ago as I would run or do exercises. I would just pause when I'm trying to get my energy back. I wouldn't just, go passive or just like, especially, often people who are not used to running or athletics or exercise, you would notice when they're taking breaks, they would start mouth breathing. It is a very common tendency. It's not a mistake or anything. It's just an instinct that kicks in, your body gets confused and thinks somehow that is helpful. And people who are a little more aware or understand the physiology of it, who are more experienced in athletics, then they would know that you're supposed to keep your mouth closed. Whenever I take pauses during my runs, I would start practicing diaphragmatic breathing, because I know I can get my energy back more quickly. And I didn't even consciously calculate or think about it that way. And then I was running with a friend the other day, and he just said, "What are you doing? Can you tell me what you're doing? Is this some kind of a thing that helps you run?" And I said, "Yes, actually, I didn't think about it. But if you notice, you run out of breath, your heart rate is higher, and if you just work on diaphragmatic breathing, you can quickly bring your heart rate down, and you're ready to go back into the next lap much more quickly. You don't need longer downtimes or breaks." Now, I'm not just talking about running, but the reason I mentioned giving that example is often in our own lives, as we are going about doing things, trying to accomplish tasks, if we can pay attention to our breath, if we can constantly stay focused on the breath, and always be aware, is my diaphragm relaxed? If you're climbing stairs, if you're going for a walk, your diaphragm doesn't need to be relaxed. But if you're sitting on the computer and answering emails, why is your diaphragm not relaxed? And that is an important key that we want to bring our attention to, because we realize, you will start noticing very quickly, if you become aware of these things, that, let me just relax a little bit. Suddenly you're not distracted. You can just write 8 emails in a row in the next 15 minutes without needing to, people feel like they work 8 hours, especially I'm speaking as somebody who has been in tech and who still works a lot on my laptop. There is this illusion of working a lot, especially people who I'm not saying that people don't work hard in tech, but when you're sitting on the laptop, for 8 hours, 9 hours a day, it can feel like you're doing a lot. But if you actually look at the number of internet tabs that you have open, if you actually think about how many times you checked your phone in the last 15 minutes, or how many things you clicked on that were not part of the task that you were trying to accomplish, you realize how scattered our energy is. And the first key to start addressing that is to stay relaxed. We cannot stay focused if we're also trying, no, I want to only focus. Yes, that works. But also when we are able to relax our body, relax our breath, as we do that, we are much more effective. In fact, it is impossible to concentrate deeply unless you're also breathing deep, unless you're also relaxed in your body. And the last thing I'll say, which again Shanti alluded to or mentioned briefly, smile. I was listening to this talk last night. I was making notes for this particular class, and I started listening to this talk, Be a Smile Millionaire, by Master. I'm sure many of you have heard this. You can easily find the recording. There are a lot of titles for these recordings that were released by Self-Realization Fellowship. I think one is called Beholding the One and All, Awakening in the Cosmic Spirit. They're wonderful titles, but he's just talking of God. And they just came up with different titles for these different talks. But this one talk, I have to tell you, he's actually talking about smiling for the full hour. I'm not kidding you. You can go back and listen to that talk. He literally just talks about smiling. In fact, I forgot to get my phone. I want to read something. Oops. I was going to cut. I was not wearing the headphones. I was going to cut a part of the talk, but then I just couldn't because every part of it was so good. But I just wrote down something that I wanted to read that Master says in that talk. A genuine smile distributes cosmic current prana to every cell in the body. The happy man is less subject to disease, for happiness itself attracts into the body a greater supply of the universal life force. In fact, in one place, Master talks about how when you don't feel happy, when you're going through negative emotions, just stand in front of the mirror and do this. Put two of your fingers like this and try to make a curve of your lips. These things sound so silly, and yet we all know, knowing the audience in this room, it is not. But it is also important for us to remember to use them. When we have a negative emotion, just smiling sometimes can be a powerful antidote. It can be a powerful antidote because immediately, as he says, it distributes cosmic life force through the body. It draws more prana into the body when we just smile. When we just smile at somebody. Even in our own home, when we are, in fact, again, I won't remember the expression. I'm not, I don't share the British sense of humor, but I remember in one of P.G. Woodhouse's stories, he describes this, middle-aged English lady, and he talks about her resting frown face. And every time he talks about her, he'll come back, and he has this very poetic description. I don't have a memory for it, but I thought about that because, again, sometimes I've noticed people who are genuinely capable of smiling and who are happy to see you and who will smile and who would interact and smile when they're with people. But then you see their resting face is often a frown face. The resting expression on their face just lacks that happiness. You can see their default vibration is somewhere between boredom and sad and hopeless. And when they see somebody, when they want to engage, the energy comes up and they're able to do things in the world. They could even be highly functional people. But then when they're just sitting still, when they're not engaged in that way, when they're not on their phone, you notice sometimes, especially, in flights or places where people are sitting and waiting, you will be surprised if you start noticing how many resting frown faces there are. It's not like people are angry or sad, but you can just sense a certain kind of emptiness, just that lack of prana, the flow of life force. Something as simple as smiling is the first step to change. The more we smile with our eyes. That's another thing that Master talks about. The more we smile with our eyes, not just with our lips, because the eyes are that window. We project that cosmic energy, and the more we project, the more we are able to draw into the body, draw more into the consciousness. So, with that, we'll just do a brief exercise now, just trying to experience. All of this is pretty self-evident, for those of us who have studied these teachings. But what we are really talking about this morning is a reminder for things that may be familiar to us, but also a reminder to practice in our own lives. The importance of just holding ourselves in that space, going back to the basics of what it is that we are doing. In a certain way, we are talking of spiritual teachings, but as I said a little bit earlier, even the label spiritual is almost unnecessary to all the things that we are talking about, because we are just talking about how can I be happy in life? How can I be the best version of myself? How can I not be bogged down by things that I feel limited by? So, we'll just do a couple of quick experiments and just get into the feeling for some of the things that I was just talking about. So let's first try to tune into this idea of posture. Sit upright in your chair, your chin parallel to the floor. And make sure, again, to underscore the importance of relaxation. Oftentimes, when we just hold our spine straight, if we are not used to it, we tend to hold tension in our body. It's important to make sure our lower back is relaxed. And if you need to today, just take the support of the chair. It's totally fine for right now, although in meditation we encourage not to do so. With closed eyes, just start mentally scanning the entire stretch of your spine now, to make sure it is fully relaxed. Your lower back is supported, moving right ahead with the midsection of your back, adjusting your shoulders, because that often helps support the midsection. The midsection obviously is held by the lower and the upper section. And moving up, the upper section is in fact easier to control because it's how we place our shoulder blades. And you can even move your arms on your thighs and try different positions to see where it is that you can get maximum relaxation and also maximum height in the spine. The perfect balance between an upright spine but also full relaxation in the upper body. You can round your shoulders and drop them back if you need to, just getting a feeling for what it means to be fully relaxed in your shoulders. And then neck. Especially for any of us who tend to sit on a desk or work on our computer all day, it is in the shoulder and neck that we hold the most amount of tension. And now moving on to the face, we often underestimate the importance of relaxing the face. I want you all to make what Gyandev calls a prune face, just trying to shrink every muscle in the body, every muscle in the face, your eyes just squinting, your forehead, and then fully relaxing. It's not tensing and relaxing in the same way, but contracting and expanding the different muscles so you can become aware of them, increase blood flow in the face. Open your jaws, trying to expand your throat if you need to. And now we are going to move on to the breath. Now we all know that it is important to breathe through our diaphragm. Now I'm going to go through a very, very simple exercise. I'm going to call this the diaphragm stretch, or the better word for it is reflexive inhale. I'll first describe this and we will do this together. What we are going to do, obviously, is we are trying to shift the center of gravity of the breath lower in the body. We often tend to hold the breath higher when our body is not fully relaxed. We want to move it lower and lower where the entire breath is powered by the belly muscles, by the diaphragm. The way we are going to do it is we are going to take a deep inhalation, expanding our belly, and we are going to extend that inhalation by about 2 or 3 counts, 2 or 3 seconds, taking a deep, long inhalation, and then we are going to hold it for 4 counts. And then we are going to exhale consciously, gradually, using our willpower, extending that exhalation much longer than we normally would. And we keep exhaling using our willpower until the belly starts drawing back in. You will feel the belly pulling back into the cavity in the midsection of your body. And then you continue exhaling until you reach a point where your body starts to tense a little bit, then let go and allow the inhalation to happen reflexively. Your diaphragm will kick into action and draw the next inhalation in, and we continue the same cycle. Taking a deeper inhalation, extending it by 3 seconds, holding the breath for 4 seconds, and a very, very gradual, slow extension of your exhalation. Using your will, extending that exhalation as long as you can, feeling the belly pulling towards your spine. And when you start to feel any tension in the body, let it go, and you will feel the inhalation happening reflexively, where the diaphragm kicks in and it starts drawing the next breath in. Let's continue this for about 3 more rounds on your own at your own pace. As you continue doing this, mentally visualize your entire body just as a balloon. A balloon that's just contracting and expanding as air is blown in and out. And there are no blocks or objects inside this balloon. The entire balloon expands as you breathe in. That your entire body feels that breath filling every body cell with prana, and as you exhale, all the air comes out, deflating the balloon, fully relaxing. Do not feel your breath confined to any part of your body, be it your chest or your lungs, but feel the breath blowing into the entirety of your physical body. And as you exhale, the breath is leaving and deflating the balloon, relaxing the entire body. There's no tension left when the breath goes out. And as you tune into the reflexive inhalation, feel that this whole operation is being conducted by the diaphragm. It is not being conducted by your will or control, but when you reach that point during your exhalation, the diaphragm kicks in and it reflexively draws the breath in. The diaphragm is the master control for your breath. Now, when you're done, we can pause and just continue breathing deep. Now I'm going to do a brief experiment with you. This is not just a guided visualization. So just bear with me, because the purpose of this is to just get into different feelings. Now again, this is something that Swami talks about in one of his exercises, and I'll do it slightly differently. For just the purpose of experiment, we are going to now shrink our posture. Just imagine somebody who's completely anxious, tense, and always on their phone. Just slouch your back, drop your head, or however you imagine this person to be. You can just imitate even somebody that you know. And I want you to just drop all the energy in the body, letting it go, just feeling tightness and tension, but also being unconscious in the body. And with your eyes closed, I want you to repeat this affirmation. I am joyful, I am free. I am happy under all circumstances. I am joyful, I am free, I am happy under all circumstances. Continue 3 more rounds of that. And then now we are going to go back to the ideal yogi posture. Sitting upright, let's take a couple of deep breaths, expanding and feeling the diaphragm. Let's bring our gaze with deep focus and attention to the point between the eyebrows, gathering all our energy at that point. And let's keep a resting smile on our face, feeling that smile illuminating our entire body, drawing prana into the body, visualizing what Master was describing in those words. Every smile draws cosmic energy into the body. And as you enjoy this particular position, for the purpose of experiment, I'm going to give you a different affirmation. I am sad and dejected. There is no hope in life. I am sad and dejected. There is no hope in life. Keep the attention strongly centered at the spiritual eye and keep that smile set on your face. Feel the energy flowing up the spine. Visualize that energy flowing up while repeating these words mentally. I am sad and dejected. There is no hope in life. And now you can open your eyes. Does anyone want to share their insights or commentary on what was your experience? Who wants to go from like the two affirmations that we just did at the end? Shantala.
The first affirmation was a little bit difficult to do it like this initially, but after the second to the third time, even though energy I was stimulating, though it was still making a difference, it was still kind of wanting me to.
It was moving your body.
My head up.
Yeah.
That energy. The other one was just in conflict.
Uh-huh.
What was happening was
I think everyone was. I'm just going to repeat a little bit for the sake of the recording. Shantala was just saying, the first affirmation after the 2 or 3 times of repeating it, the body was starting to almost align itself to the words. And the second affirmation, because we were forcing the energy to be in a certain direction, there was just this conflict between the words and the energy. Anyone else? Shankari was just saying she found both of them funny and was just grateful.
both were, the first one, slouching and doing an uplifting formation, was difficult to believe because that's not matching with the posture. So
Yeah.
when the posture became straight, it became bright.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, when you are in straight posture and saying that I am sad and dejected, then it is difficult to believe that, is it really?
I'll repeat Pooja also for the recording. She was saying both of them were interesting. The first one, what did you say?
I said that when I was slouching
Yeah.
and saying that I am uplifted, that's not the
Yeah.
physical reality and the
Yeah, there was just a conflict between the physical reality and the position that she was feeling. And in the second one, she was in that position energetically, and her mind was finding it very hard to believe the words that she herself was saying. Now, I have to say the experiment is very skewed because obviously we are sitting in a room full of Kriya Yogis. And I'll tell you scientifically though, if this experiment were done with a group of people that did not have exposure to yoga, they would have a much more uplifted experience in the second part of the exercise. Because the energy and our actions supersede. Even though we are saying those words, I'm not saying we are imbibing or necessarily believing in them. If you're just affirming just verbally, your body and your energy often supersedes. It has a certain higher power over how the brain works. Often our actions can push us out of negative states of energy. It is something for us to remember. And when we are like this, even if you tell yourself, now this was dramatic, this experiment, but I'm going to now bring it back to the reality of our own lives. When we believe, I'm doing well, I'm happy, everything's great in my life, and I meditate, and God is great, I'm grateful for all the opportunities in my life, but we are sitting like this and we are tense in our body. There's a conflict there. That's not actually where we are. Change is difficult. Even if life is trying to tell you, this situation is hard, this problem is unsolvable, you don't have money, this relationship is not working, you're not able to accomplish these tasks. But if you're sitting with an upright spine, with a smile on your face, and your energy always gathered here, you don't need to believe that. Deep in your consciousness, you don't believe that. You know that there is hope. It's okay, we'll figure it out. There's always a solution to everything. And it's a lesson. I'm grateful for everything God has given to me in my life. So these two situations are not as alien even to us yogis. If you think about it, there are times where situations in life feel insurmountable. And there are times when, even though nothing is wrong, we are not necessarily holding the right energy inside out. So it is, although a dramatic experiment to try, the moral of the story, or the hopeful inference from all of this is, when we are able to always keep the energy aligned, and with things we can control easily, that we have awareness of, then everything else falls into place. Even things that we feel are hard to solve, are difficult to overcome, whatever they are, they start falling into place. I wanted to share just one last thing, because this was the latest research that I was looking at, just a piece of science. It's not a spiritually uplifting thing, but I had it in my mind. This was so surprising when I was looking at this clinical study. I was sharing this with a friend who was going through some struggles and who was on some medication. There's this class of medicines called SSRIs, for prescribed often for depression. They inhibit serotonin, and they have a certain neurochemical mechanism. And this latest research paper from 2023, they actually published data that proved that exercise, when you sweat, just 10 minutes of exercise, where you're able to sweat and move energy, was 1.5 times more effective, without exception, than even the dosage that any of these people were prescribed for these antidepressants. And that is the experiment that we are trying to do here. I mean, for all of us, it is a higher octave we are living in, and we can still apply it. But, universalizing it to a principle that can be applied to everybody, everywhere, when we start moving that physical energy, our consciousness, our ability to solve problems, our ability to make changes, our ability to shift things is automatic. We do not have to necessarily always lean on external help. We can change it even by simply taking charge of energies in ways where we already have control, where we already have the power to make those shifts. So we are going to take a brief bathroom break. Shanti, go ahead. Yeah, no, let's, okay, yeah.
I was just joking with a few friends up here that I don't really feel like there's much more to be said. It's been said, and said so beautifully. This is what Shanti was expressing last night by the time it was her turn. What more is there to say? And in a certain way, that's both true, of course, and the last part, when we were thinking about how to structure this class, the first section, again, what does it mean to reframe that which we are striving to transform, what we are striving to achieve, and how do we reframe that into a yogic lens? And then Saiganesh, I called his section the science of happiness, and what does it mean to really shift and to transform? Because just like he's saying, if you don't, in fact, I got into a car accident a few weeks ago now, and I've had a few different cars. Shanti let me drive her car for a little while, and then I had another car, and now I have this car, and I'm finally back to a car that has a key with an ignition, because those push-start cars scare me. Suddenly you turn it on, and you have no idea where your key is, and I found I was always looking for my key, and I was never sure if it was on or off. And I was thinking about that, because if we can't tap into and access that source of true joy, that inspiration and that energy, if we can't actually start the ignition, then we're left in that place where we're idling. And we're constantly, and so many people in the world are stuck in that place, wishing, waiting for things to get better. My sister will never watch this, so I can share this story. But she and her husband met when they were very young, and they've both grown and evolved. And as many couples do, they've grown and evolved in different ways. And they have 2 little ones, and so things aren't easy every day. And I can just see sometimes, and she even says, oh, we're just waiting for the kids to grow up for things to get better. And you think, oh, you're just idling in place instead of taking action, taking the next steps. If I want to transform, what do I do right now? And so this third section, I called it applying change. What do we do? Where do we start? And of course, for those of us sitting in this room, there are two key ingredients. And Shanti began this way when she was sharing about energy. That's the first thing I wrote down. Energy is the secret ingredient to everything, and we know that to be the case. Without energy, we can't move anything, just as Shanti was saying, the first law of thermodynamics. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but it can always be transformed. Everything that we are, every situation, every circumstance, every thought seed and kernel that we experience can be transformed if we choose to apply it, if we choose to apply energy to it. And of course, the second key ingredient in that is to understand what that source of energy is, and that we can't actually begin a journey of self-transformation in the way that we want to transform if we can't accept and open up to the fact that that flow of energy is divine consciousness, guiding and intuitively supporting our life. I'm saying intuitively, sometimes very directly, and in big ways supporting our life. And so when we start to begin to think about energy, of course, the place that I wanted to begin is when Swami Kriyananda, in The Art and Science of Raja Yoga, he has this wonderful aphorism that we read over and over and over again. The greater the will, the greater the flow of energy. The greater the flow of energy, the greater the magnetism. And I love this line he says in the Raja Yoga book. He says that singular thought will revolutionize and transform your life. He says, emblazon it in your mind. Wake up this is me now. Wake up every morning and say it over and over again. The greater the will, the greater the flow of energy. One of the first retreats and classes that I took up at Ananda Village when I was still just very young and green, and all of this was so new to me, and I heard, I didn't even really understand what it meant to apply our energy. Mantra Devi was giving one section of the course, and she was talking about what it was like when she first came to Ananda as well, and she had to start waking up and meditating every day and doing energization every day, and she hit that point where she said, I can't do this, I don't want to do it anymore. And she laid in bed, and every single morning she said, the first thing I will do is the superconscious living exercises. When I wake up, I will get out of bed and I will do the superconscious living exercises. It takes 30 seconds to 2 minutes, depending on how quickly you're doing them. And she said, I won't make any decisions beyond that. But there's no thought, there's no argument. I'll wake up and do them. And of course, what do we know? Never once did that thought follow with, well, I'll go back to bed, or, well, I don't need to meditate today. It's the energy that we apply, the willingness that we put into it. And then the second part of this beautiful equation that we have, the greater the will, the greater the flow of energy, the greater the flow of energy, the greater the magnetism, is, well, what is willingness? What does that look like? And that's where I wanted to work with us today, because the root of transformation comes back to our desire. We only transform those parts of ourselves that we desire to transform. We only put energy into those parts of our lives that we desire to put energy into. And we all know what that's like. I've just been, as I told you guys, with my family the last few days, and I was flowing through, and you just look at all of the emails that are coming in every single day, and you just pick and choose which ones you're putting energy into, which ones you'll save and respond to later. We do that with all aspects of our life. And that's okay when we're on vacation for a few days, and that's okay when we've had a long day and we have to come home and compartmentalize our energy output. But if we live in that place of feeling like we're only going to put energy into the things that give us satisfaction, if our desire is rooted only in those things that make us feel satisfied and fulfilled instantaneously in the moment, then we're always going to be stuck idling, because we'll never break out of that cage of our limitations. Somewhere in here, I couldn't find it, so I didn't want to take the time, but in something that maybe it wasn't even in what I printed, but something I was reading this morning, Swami Kriyananda, I believe it was Swamiji or maybe Yogananda, was talking about how most of us live our life just like we're looking at a bamboo fence. And it was such a perfect image because when you're looking at a bamboo fence, he's saying you get these little glimpses of what's on the other side, but you can't really see through it. And of course, that's what he's saying. What we don't realize is that we always think we're trying to get to the other side of the fence. But what we don't realize is that the fence is containing us in, and the other side is that expansion. We're always just trying to find what's over there, what's happening on this side of the world or this side of my career, what's happening with my partner here, what's happening with my children there, and just to make things work the way that we want them to. And so this equation that he gives us for desire is one of my favorites. He says desire is willpower plus energy directed at a goal. It's that simple, right? That our desire is willpower plus energy directed at a goal. And so when we have a desire to transform something, and that's what we're talking about. We could get into the whole litany of where our desires, which are pulling us up and which are pulling us down. But here we are at the new year. Let's talk about resolutions. Let's all affirm a desire that's going to help us to transform. How do we apply that and where do we begin? And one of my favorite things that Yogananda ever wrote comes from an article, but it's written in How to Be a Success. He gives us 5 steps to success, and we're going to go through those 5 steps and talk about how we can apply them in our own lives. But I want to start at the end where he says, after he lists these 5 steps out, he says, these are the 5 stages of success. And he says, all unsuccessful people are either ignorant of these laws or consciously violate them. Which always, I wrote it out as soon as I saw it and I put it on my refrigerator, so I have to look at it every day and I think, wow, because I'm no longer ignorant of these laws. They're right here and I have to look at them. So I love that. They're either ignorant of these laws or consciously violating them. And I'll start by talking about the 5 steps, and then I wanted to apply them to what we're talking about more specifically today. The first one, again, these are laws of success. The choice of a good material or spiritual goal that suits you. The second one, the performance of that work with attention, love, and interest. Number 3, continued interest and superhuman patience in your work. Number 4, the thought of constant progress to neutralize the tendency toward mechanical habit. And number 5, finding the kingdom of success. And so if we break these down and start to look at what they mean in terms of our desire, our effort, our willingness, our energy directed at transformation. The first one here, choose a good material or spiritual goal that suits you. We have to begin by looking at something that is going to help us to transform and to grow spiritually. What is it that's going to help us to take our next step? I was just speaking with a friend a few weeks ago, or about a week ago now, and she's going through, or she is in the midst of, a tough situation. She was married, had a family, the family split apart, and now she's raising children on her own. And she was just saying to me, what does it look like to have a partner on this path? What does it look like when you want a relationship, but there's not only a spiritual path that I want to be true to, there are children involved, there are, it grows and grows and grows. My life is very uncomplicated in a certain way when I was listening to and thinking about all of what is engaged in her life. And she was saying, I just don't know what to do. And she was saying, I don't know, I want a relationship, but I don't know if that's what's right for me, and I don't know what's going to help me, and how do I get out of this? And the first thing that I said to her is, you have to start by offering it to Master. Because we can't surrender a desire, we can't suppress a desire. We can't just wake up one day and say, you know what, it's less complicated for me to just not want a partner. So I'm not going to want a partner. I mean, superhuman patience, you could get there. That's the beautiful story of that Saiganesh was sharing, right? I can't say the word Rama. I can't chant the word Rama, but let me start by chanting Mora, over and over again. And that was so beautiful, where he's saying that we have to start with where we're standing. One of my favorite things that Swamiji said when he was asked, What's his favorite yoga pose? What's the best yoga pose? That which has us standing firmly on our own 2 feet. What a beautiful affirmation to take into the world. Why would we want? We're not going to get any benefit out of a pose if we're doing this the whole time. What has us standing firmly on our own 2 feet? And so that's where we began. I said to her, well, if you're not even sure if a relationship is right, if it's what you want, if it's not what you don't want, let's start by writing a prayer. And we wrote a prayer and we took Yogananda's, I forget what it's always called. It's not soulmate. What is the word? It's not the prayer for soulmates. He doesn't use the word soulmate, but there's a prayer that Yogananda wrote.
The right companion.
Something like that, yeah. Yeah, spiritual companionship. Well, there's a prayer, obviously many of us would know it, to help us to attract and magnetize a super conscious relationship and partnership. And so we started by looking at that, writing it down, talking it through. What does it mean? And I said every single day, say this prayer and ask Yogananda, what is right for me? What is it that I need to take my next step? What do I need to support my children to grow spiritually? And then we're not surrendering, we're not suppressing, we're not suppressing, we are surrendering. But we're not suppressing, we're simply asking for the divine to come in and to participate and to help us, to guide us. And I said that along the way, there's step number 3, superhuman patience. One day you'll know. One day you'll know, and it'll be right. And I always like to pray when I pray to the masters and ask for help, I say, and make it really obvious. Because sometimes I don't know. I think Shanti was the first person who told a story with that, where she said, no riddles, no symbols. I want to know. Tell me. I want to be able to see it. I don't want to miss it if it's right there in front of us. But we have to surrender our desires to the divine. We have to ask for help because we don't know what we need. We think we know what we need, but sometimes things come to us in the most obscure ways. The challenges that we face are actually what strengthen us and support us. And so when we surrender to that adaptability, to that opportunity to listen in surrender, then our desires become more aligned. Then our desires become, just as Saiganesh was speaking to, sitting up straight in our spine, our posture relaxed, our heart open and receptive. And it's so beautiful the way that he was speaking, that we begin with our body and we begin with that which we can control, so that we are prepared, just like the story of the 7 virgins. We're prepared, and our lamp is lit, so that when that intuition speaks to us, we can come in and we can listen and we can hear what the truth is. And so that's step 1, to be rooted in something that is spiritual, but also attainable. And that's what I love about this. A spiritual vocation or goal that suits you. And it has to be something that's suitable and something that's attainable. Because if we sit down right now and say that I'm going to meditate 7 hours every morning and every evening, and it's not attainable for us, we're just setting ourselves up. Do you guys know the story of Sisyphus? It's a Greek myth where Sisyphus, I forget what he did wrong, but he did something wrong, so he was eternally punished. And what he has to do is roll this giant boulder. He's a very strong demigod, and he has to roll this boulder to the top of the hill. And he's fated that as soon as the boulder gets to the top of the hill, it rolls back down. And he goes to the bottom of the hill, and he rolls the hill up. He rolls the boulder up the hill again. And that's his fate for eternity, to roll the boulder up the hill just to have it come back down and up and down. And he's exerting so much effort and energy and willpower in the process. And he's doomed. The Greek gods are unforgiving. In that way, thank God that we have a different path that we get to follow, because it's a dim reality. But for each one of us, just a side note, at this high school that I work at, we used to have the Sisyphus Award that was given to someone at the end of every year who really had to toil. I know, and I said, can we please do away with this? Because it was just so terrible. But anyway, to come back to what we're speaking to, we are not Sisyphus. We actually have a guru. We have the story. I think it was Puru, right? Joseph Selby, who told us the story of the dream that he had, where there was a giant pile of mud and tar and muck on the beach, and he had a little plastic shovel. And he knew somehow in his dream that his goal, what he needed to do, was move all of that muck away. And so he's there with his little plastic shovel, and it's breaking, and he can't actually actually penetrate the muck and the tar at all. And he hears something all in his dream on the other side of the pile of muck, and he walks around this pile of muck, and there's Yogananda with a bulldozer just smiling at him, moving the muck out of the way. I mean, that's what we get to celebrate, and that's what we get to aspire to. And when you think about it in that way, what can't we achieve? What wouldn't we aspire to when we have the guru with a bulldozer on the other side of the pile of tar and muck? So there is nothing that can hold us back except our own fear, our own hesitations. And so if we come back to these keys for success, remember, we already know now, I've faded all of you, you are no longer ignorant to the laws of success, which means that we must follow them. The second one, the performance of that work with attention, love, and interest. This is our willingness. This is our ability to wake up every single day, like that story of Mantra Devi, and say, something in me is fighting this, so I'm going to throw the dog a bone. I'm going to do just one thing that I can do, and I will wake up every day without question, and I will perform the superconscious living exercises. And to the rest of the world, I was energizing every day out at the house that I was staying at with my parents. And I have just the most adorable, I think everyone loves their family and their nieces, but mine are just particularly fantastic. And my niece is 2.5 years old, but she speaks like a 4. I keep saying to people she's 4, but she's actually only 2.5. She has so many words, and she just speaks like constant, and she comes out. They call me Kate. Kate, what you doing? Kate, why are you doing that? Kate, why are you making a fist? Kate, why are you jumping? Just over and over again, and we were energizing together, and I was teaching her how to, relax and tense each part of her body. And so I'm saying all of that because the energization exercises, just like anything, if we just wake up and move through it and do them, or the super conscious living exercises, just like Saiganesh was saying, on one hand, you could look at it and say, well, that's just calisthenics, it's just movement. But just as that beautiful affirmation, what I was finding with that fun exercise that we were doing is that even sitting up straight, if I was saying, I forget the affirmation now, but I'm sad, I'm depressed, I'm lonely, I could find a way that my brain wanted to sneak into that, even with my posture straight. But when I smiled, it was impossible. There was no way to be sad and depressed when I was smiling. And so just as we were sharing and actually experiencing in that, we know that going through the process of these things, putting the energy and the willingness into it, whatever it may be, saying an affirmation every single day. This is a practice that I've taken up, and it's not something that I do religiously every single evening, but most of the time I try to. And I realized about 1.5 years ago that I always had this thought in my head, affirmation doesn't work, it's not working for me. And I was aware enough that it was me and not the affirmations themselves, but I was realizing I'd practice them for a few weeks, maybe a few months, maybe a year if I was lucky, and then I'd let it go. So I picked an affirmation that I love, and I have a journal, and I write it out, and I said to myself, I will continue to write this out until I achieve it. So even if that's the rest of my life, I will fill journals with this same affirmation over and over and over again, because that's what we're here to do. And maybe I won't reap the fruits of that in this lifetime, but we know for certain that we will reap the benefits of that in some lifetime. And chances are it'll happen in this lifetime. And so then the next one that we have, continued interest and superhuman patience. Whatever it is that we're striving to achieve, I love that line, that's superhuman patience. The patience and the willingness and the persistence to have faith in what it is that we desire to achieve. A few years ago, about 1 year ago now, I had just a week where I met with 4 or 5 different people, all of whom were going through big, intense challenges and trials in their life. And we were just talking, and it just kind of happened that it was one of these weeks where it lined up in a row over the course of 6 days. I met with 5 different people who had big, big things happening. And what I found at the end of that week, and of course you're speaking to each person individually because the need is different depending on the karma and the situation. But I walked away from that week and I realized that everything that we face in this life, every challenge that we face, and really every joy that we face in this life can be distilled down to the singular question, do I have faith and am I practicing that faith? Do I have faith? And it's not necessarily faith that I'm going to get the outcome that I desire, but do I have faith that what is happening right now is for my own good? That what is happening right now will help me to grow, to learn, to evolve, even if it is a challenge. How much faith do you have in the divine? And what I've learned, even in that process, when we say faith in the divine, there's a subtle thought that that's passive. Well, how much faith do I have that it's going to work out? No. How much faith do you have in yourself, in your own courage and willingness to persevere? That's what faith looks like. It's the reflection of the moon, which is why we did that visualization that we did before. It's not standing up and saying, how strong am I? I can manage all of this on my own. But do I have the faith and the courage to persevere, knowing that the outcome will be mine, whatever it may be? Let me rephrase that. Knowing that the outcome, I was thinking in my head, I think Asha just said this recently. I was going to say that the outcome will be for our own growth. And then in my head, I was also thinking, I think Asha just shared recently when what she says to herself is, if it's not a happy ending, it's not the end. I think that's an Asha statement. Or maybe she was pulling it from Swami. So sorry, I got confused because two thoughts were crossing in my mind at the same time. But that reality, that's the root of self-transformation. That's the faith. Faith is not passive. Nothing on this path is passive, which is one of the things that I love so much about this path. Even the meditation that we practice is dynamic. Everything is dynamic. Everything is energy. That's what I wrote here. Energy is the secret ingredient to everything. Your willingness is your energy. Your effort is your energy. Your thoughts are your energy. And of course, it's plugging back into the source and knowing what that cosmic conscious energy is. And then we have the magnetism that comes, the thought of constant progress to neutralize the tendency toward mechanical habit. This is our magnetism. The greater the will, the greater the flow of energy. When our desire and when our will and our energy are directed toward a goal, that initiates the desire to transform. That energy magnetizes the outcome that we want. The greater the will, the greater the flow of energy. And that magnetism is so much stronger than, or the magnetism of light is so much stronger than the magnetism of darkness and the magnetism of failure. That's what I was experiencing in the activity that Saiganesh was leading us through, is that even when we're crouched down, I think it was Shantala who was sharing, that even when she was crouched down in that position of just demoralization, of letting things go, the depression, the thought, I am joy, I am free, I'm joyful, I am free, was coaxing her energy up. But when we were up here and we were smiling and we were saying, I'm sad, I'm depressed, that wasn't drawing us down. The magnetism of light is always stronger if we're willing to give our energy and effort into it, if we're willing to focus on it and to remember that. And then finally, we have finding the kingdom of success. And it all ends and it all comes back to that root and that reality that this is what Yogananda tells us. These are the keys to success. These are the tickets to success. This is what we need in order to transform. And it all comes back to that flow of energy. We can come all the way back to where Shanti was starting with us. And I was sharing about this earlier when we were going through our affirmation. But that energy is a directional flow. That if we're sitting with the right posture, if we're breathing, if we're focusing our gaze at the point between the eyebrows, Jyotish, remember that challenge that he gave us to just keep your energy here, and he called this his joy spot. And if you're not feeling, I do this all the time, if I'm just angry, upset, frustrated, I can't shake the emotion, I just push on the joy spot until I can feel a difference. There is a way that we can use the outer world, the elements of our life that we can control to ultimately or to inevitably transform the energy that's flowing in our body, because everything is directional. Everything is about lifting our spirits up. Transformation cannot happen when we're crouched down. Transformation cannot happen when we wake up. Just as Shanti was sharing, I'm changing her story a little, but as I was saying earlier, if we wake up every day and we have a torn Achilles and we only start the day by listing off all the ways that is limiting us, all the things that we cannot do, then that's where we live. But if we can wake up, even if there's pain in our Achilles, even if we can't walk 12 miles like we used to do, and we start by focusing on what we can do, that shifts every single aspect of our life. And we have someone sitting in the room who can attest. It changes your ability to do things that you didn't even think you could do, the superhuman aspect of it. I wanted to end just by, we're actually going to end with a fire ceremony, because how do we talk about self-transformation without writing down that which we want to transform and offering it to the divine? But I also wanted to give you guys, I said I would do this. These are all excerpts and quotes on self-transformation that were published in Clarity magazine in 2010. And they're just these beautiful little nuggets. I'll just read one or two of them and talk about them for a minute or two. But you can then take these home. See which one I want to read. I'll read the second one. When one realizes that self-transformation requires time, he develops a more tolerant attitude toward himself, as well as towards others. He takes his daily step at a time. One day, in a flash, he realizes that the job really hasn't been so difficult at all. Or Swamiji also writes, without inner transformation, any outer improvement in the human lot would be like trying to strengthen a termite-ridden building with a fresh coat of paint. Self-transformation occurs finally when the resolution to change is charged with superconscious awareness and thence fully absorbed into the subconscious. That's what Shanti was speaking to earlier when she was saying that she's spoken to so many people who, I think she was talking about weight loss, who realized that it's not necessarily the food that you're eating. All of those things play a role, or the number of calories you're exerting every day in your exercise. But that true transformation came with a shift in consciousness. And that's exactly what Swamiji says to us. That's such an important one for us. Self-transformation occurs when the resolution to change is charged with superconscious awareness. Just as I was saying before, nothing can change on the level of consciousness at which it exists. This is why we are a path of dynamic energy. We must always raise our energy, lift our awareness and our concentration up, focus at the point between the eyebrows, do whatever we can to open our hearts and to allow that energy to flow. Because that's where we live. That's when we live in that reality, that state of being that tells us nothing is fixed. Nothing is stuck. Nothing is idle. And we have the tools and the techniques in order to lift and transform and shift that. And so what we'll do now, just to end our day, is I will give each of you a purification slip, just because I don't have other pieces of paper. But we're not going to have a purification. We're just going to have a fire ceremony. But I thought if everyone is okay with it, and you can shake your head yes or no, that we would actually burn our slips today, unless there's anyone in the room. And it's not we want to make sure everyone's healthy. But I thought, looking around earlier, that this might be a crowd that would be okay with that. And Shanti wants to come up and share something.
I'd like to take one moment. There's been so much shared today. It all sounds rather simple and like things we know, but there's been pure wisdom here. I mean, my listening to Saiganesh and Lakshmi, what this sheet Lakshmi just handed out to us is remarkable. But I wanted to take all of the way that all of this has been said and bring it down into one little capsule that we can all take home. Because the title of this morning, if I remember it, is Change Your Life. Is that right? Everything that's been said is true, and we've heard it. And it is very, very hard to transform this. Even with Lakshmi's story about Mantra Devi, which is perfect. But I would like to say, as we go to write on these sheets, because I'm in this remarkable position of having been in touch with almost all of you recently. I know a lot about what's happening for people and how our lives go. And because I'm an open book and I always tell my stories, you all know what I'm going through. So we know each other here. And I want to say, I know that a lot of us are challenged. We hear this and we say, of course, but it's challenging. Think of one thing that you can do. One thing. I was meeting 2 weeks ago with somebody who came saying, help me, I really want to go deeper and expand. We decided that this person would go to the Thursday night meditation once a week in the community room. That's it. Nothing else about their life would change. But 3 days ago, they wrote to me and said, I can't do it. I can't do it. How do you think it would be if I listened once a week to a 20-minute treasure talk? 120. I said, great, do it. And I don't know where that's going to go, but the point is, it seemed pretty simple. Go to one meditation a week. Nothing about meditate every morning, nothing. Go and sit in the meditation. I can't. We're hearing all of this wisdom. It's not necessarily accessible like that. When you write what you want to offer to God, think of one thing that you know you can do, like what Andre Davy did. Whatever it is for you, it doesn't matter how simple, make it something you can succeed at, because every success allows us to, it's exponential. One little success, you might say, I will meditate 5 minutes twice a week. You might say, I will smile 1 time a day, I'll smile. Maybe just when I first wake up, I'll stand in the mirror and do what Saiganesh was telling us. Master told us, if you can't smile, stand in front of the mirror. That changes, Saiganesh said it, changes everything. That's the truth. It changes the biochemical aspect of our whole being. Isn't that remarkable? Think of one little thing wherever you are. It might be you're already meditating 2 hours every morning and you want to go to 2.5 hours. It might be that you're really not meditating and you want to start with a few minutes or a smile or sitting up straight. And if this is more important than everything we've heard, think of one thing that you will succeed at and offer it into that fire. And that is how we begin to change our lives. Not just by listening to these lofty ideals that we all share all the time, everything we've been talking about. Take a simple thing that each one of us said. And if it's just sitting up straight consciously for a few minutes once a day, do it. Something like that. Make it real in your life. God knows anyway. We're not hiding anything here. They know exactly where we are. So to move forward, think of one baby step that you can make.